name is Dr. Kanyenje Gakombe. I'm the founder CEO of Metropolitan Hospital. I also run an IT company known as Alliance Management Systems, and I'm an investor in a second one known as Crestwave Healthcare.
Early on, growing up in Murang'a, he was the businessman, selling chicken or quarter loaves of bread. His main goal was not really to make money, but to solve the problems in the society where he was living in, be it primary school, secondary school, or at the university. Now, after 27 years of successfully running a hospital business, Dr. Kanyenje Gakombe says he can draw a line between his experiences early on to where he currently is. My name is Dr. Mercy Korir, and this is Doctor's Diary, the story of entrepreneurship, teamwork, and a shared purpose.
Metropolitan was being built to look after the middle class. Our clients were not the people who could afford to go out of country for treatment. Our clients were not the ones who could afford the private hospitals, the high-end private hospitals. It was that person who could afford something other than the public system, but was forced to go to the public system because the private facilities that were available were beyond their available means. So we wanted to be a bridge. Actually, we used to, as we are discussing with the team, because we are all in Kenyatta training, and when you're on the 8th floor of Kenyatta, you can see across Gong Road to Nairobi Hospital. We used to tell each other that we'll build a hospital where the Kenyatta mortuary is, somewhere in the middle of Nairobi Hospital and Kenyatta, in terms of cost and quality. So that was our space, and that space was here in eastern Nairobi, and we needed a substantial piece of land, and so this became available.
Dr. Gakombe takes me on a brief tour of the hospital located in Buruburu, Nairobi City County. Its location in Eastlands was not accidental but deliberate. He prides himself in a paperless hospital where he says the patient's journey and convenience comes second to none.
Early on, when he started the hospital, we were running manual systems, and I was fairly clueless as to what was going on, right? And so we were growing, you know, as a facility, we discovered there was need, because when we landed here, our first year we had a turnover of 11 million. The second year we went to 44 million. The third year we went to 77 million. And we discovered, and of course that was driven by patients, not by raising prices, okay? So there was definitely need for the service we are providing. Patient numbers were growing, uptake was growing, but we were making losses. And I sought to understand why from the accountants. How come each year our losses are getting worse? And they told me systems. So I decided to stop feeling helpless and be not just in charge but also in control. And IT for me provided an opportunity to have a dashboard like a car that would tell me what's going on. You know, feelers across the organization that would pick signals and get them to me. That was the fundamental drive, that not just be in charge, but also be in control of what is going on. So we went into a consolidation phase. We even pulled back on trying to, to go and talk to more corporates to sign up. There was no point being a leaking sieve, because for every person who came here, we were losing money. So the more that came, the more the money we are going to lose. And so today, our entire facility is networked, fairly paperless. You know, large, especially the outpatient is paperless, and every single day we seek to improve it. This system is Unilever Tanzania, Unilever Kenya, Outspan Hospital, Armed Forces Memorial. We have 2 sites in Uganda. we've not been very aggressive in marketing it because my strength is basically building it.
The hospital, which sits in a 5-acre piece of land, has adjacent to it residential units built by the team that set up the hospital. These were meant to accommodate staff and doctors who back then hardly lived in this part of the city.
My personal ambition is beyond Metropolitan. And my outlook on life is first to look at the contribution I can make to the world, because I am where I am because a lot of people have sacrificed or put together knowledge that benefits me. My high school principal used to tell me that we can see far because we stand on the shoulders of a giant, because somebody before us put up a school that we could go and excel in. And so I see Metropolitan as a platform to raise the bar in healthcare standards for the country, because I'm acutely aware that one hospital as a physical infrastructure, unless we can export the ideas, the capabilities, the thinking beyond this physical location, then we'll not be making a real difference to the healthcare Kenyans get. So our thinking usually starts with what we can do for country, for the world, country, then Metropolitan, in that very deliberate order. That's why I spent time and energy on KHF and hospital associations and KEPSA, so that I can share what has been shared by others to me. You know? Even this particular hospital, I no longer have to work here. I intend to step down in about 3 years, because there are now people who can run it, and I can focus on other things, and it can live beyond me, because we must also as a country build institutions that do not go to the grave with the founders.
But setting up and running a hospital was not always the dream. Writing was a first choice, inspired by William Shakespeare.
I was a good student in English, and I had never met a doctor. You know, I had met people in hospitals, because growing up in the village, you don't get to see doctors. There was none in my village. I had met people at the dispensary. A lot of what they did wasn't very attractive to me. It caused a lot of pain to us. So my second choice was to be a lawyer. You know, I was good in English, so the place to go was law. And medicine became an interest in high school for two reasons. I was pretty good in biology, and at the same time, the school I went to, Mangu, for my O and A level, if you are a top student and biology was your subject, you became a doctor. If you are a top student in physics, you became an engineer or an architect. And if you are a top student in physics, you became a physicist. We are an entirely science school for our A level, so many of us were influenced to follow our bigger brothers into medicine.
Dr. Gakombe's eye for business started when he was young. Some worked, some failed, and became lessons for the next venture.
Growing up, I was interested in trade. I was born up country in Moranga, and like many village kids, I kept chicken, I kept goats. So by the time I was going to secondary school, I was already trading in goats and chicken. They were stolen when I went to Form 1. When I went to high school, I joined the Scouts and attempted to grow beans for sale to support the Scout movement, because we always broke as the Scout troop. In A level, I sold bread to my classmates, my schoolmates. You know, I was a bread vendor. I was trying to solve a problem. And in university, I did a number of things. One was buying and trading in shares and stocks at the stock exchange. working in the stock exchange itself, running a matatu, which was a failure, big time, renting out construction equipment, all sorts of stuff. But fundamentally, entrepreneurship is about solving a problem. In all those instances, I was attempting to solve a problem.
In medical school at the University of Nairobi, Dr. Gakombe was an active student, but he credits his success to teamwork and group effort.
In my 5th year, when you are trying to bring SONU back, because the University of Nairobi Students' Organization had been banned, so we were agitating to bring it back, so that was some additional responsibility. It wasn't very stressful. And one of the reasons is that I always worked in groups. Metropolitan is group owned. It doesn't belong to me. I raise money from people. So throughout my life, I've worked in groups. You know, I studied with a colleague in primary school, studied in a group for my O-levels, studied in a group for A-level, was in a discussion group throughout my years in University of Nairobi. And so we helped each other, we compensated for each other's weaknesses. We had a prefect to make sure we read. She's now an eye surgeon, Dr. Millicent Wanyoike, teaches at the University of Nairobi. So she made sure we read. And when we are taking commercial breaks, we talked about business, among other things. So I would lead the business conversation, and she would make sure we were studying, and everybody would pick up something they were good at. So that group effort helped. At home, my wife was pretty good at helping out. She also took a job during campus at the stock exchange. So it was teamwork. And I had help from relatives. I had an uncle who was the chairman of the stock exchange then, so he helped me trade in shares. So my experience has been that if you're working in a team, if you're in a group, it becomes easier.
Dr. Gakombe says his entrepreneurial spirit was born out of a need to solve a societal problem, just like what entrepreneurship should be. He has learned that from this, money comes as a surprise.
Part of my drive to find alternative income was that the lifestyle I wanted, my parents couldn't provide, and I was acutely aware that my dad would retire before everybody had gone through school. So from around class 6, I figured out I had a job to do to pay school fees for my siblings. So by A-level, I was paying my own school fees. By university, I was already educating siblings. In 4th year, I got married, so I had a child to raise. The wife could look after herself financially. She was a vet student, but the child was a shared responsibility. So yes, I had a lot of motivation to supplement income, like many Kenyans.
Being a parent early on, Dr. Gakombe's sons are now 30 and 27 years old.
Our firstborn has a handicap. He's autistic, suffers from autism. So we are not expecting grandkids. We have to actually plan how he'll have care for the rest of his life, even post our own life. So among the things that engage my mind is how to make this country better, because I'm aware that not everybody is able to fend for themselves, through people I know, including my son, and how to build a system that can take care of people like Martin. His name is Martin, because they can't look after themselves.
Raising a child with special needs has not been easy.
The first thing is reconciling whose genes didn't work, okay? Because if you can't reconcile that one, you may probably end up separating as parents, going past the blame game of which side it came from. And usually you'll find, my side wants to say it's that other side, and her side may want to say it's her side. So as a couple, you have to make a decision to keep out the noise. The second is having the resources, the time, the money, because it tends to be time intensive, money intensive, to take care of those special needs. Because many can't use public transport, they can't use public schools, And I think it's getting easier. First because of media, you know, mainstream media, social media. I have seen a lot of interest in autism over the years compared to when we started. There's a lot more interest. And it's also now possible for people to publish their own stories. So you can look around and see the global picture. You are not limited to Kenya. You know, search for support organizations on the internet. So to me, the digital environment has enabled such parents to find help, to make it easier to find help, just like it's easier to find a lot of things today in the marketplace. And two, even to find solutions, you know, like training videos. They were not available to us when you're starting off. You needed hard copies of books. Now you can get material from across the world that is useful. And we also recognize disability more, even for the government. You know, you can get tax waivers. Unfortunately, we are here to give tax waivers to parents. Yeah. You know, we give tax waivers to individuals who have a handicap, but the people who carry the biggest burden are parents whose children can't even work. You know, because a tax waiver is only useful if you have an income. For those who can't even make a single cent, they actually are totally dependent. That solution does not work for them. But of course, there's still quite a lot of holding back. And in a sense, you have to work hard to overcome that.
Such challenges and desires to offer solutions keep Dr. Gakombe moving. Being a sixth born in his family, he was the first of his siblings to go to university. His curiosity inspired him to read and read widely.
I used to ask myself why we are not doing well in school. Our neighbor had kids who were doing much better, so at least there were people to look up to that had gone to university. I knew people go to university. My mom's cousins had gone to university, and some were doing quite well. So at least I knew 1/16 of my genes were campus material. So that was a source of motivation. And one of them ended up being the chairman of the stock exchange. So when I took interest in the stock exchange, eventually found a part-time job there, got hired by a stockbroking firm, which even trained me as a stockbroker. So there was somebody to lead me, somebody to show me the way. I also used to read a lot. The part of what made a difference was that I realized pretty early, around class 4, that there was a much bigger world out there, because my father's only brother happened to have been an avid reader. He had a library, and he had all sorts of books.
The making of this success story started in his medical school discussion group, and the vision was clear: set up a decent facility that they would afford to be treated in as doctors.
Having worked in the stock exchange, I learned things like private placements, IPOs, you know, because that's what the company did. Prospectuses. So the first thing is that our share offer was not a Juakali one. We actually wrote a prospectus, hired consultants, convinced Deloitte and Touche to be the reporting accountants for our projections. So the document had credibility. You know, it was a credible document. We had application forms that were like for any listed company. A lot of the stuff I wrote myself. You know, I would read and write. And secondly, we looked for older people. And I keep telling young people, if you have a credibility gap, look around for somebody who believes in you and bring them on board. We knew that very few people are going to believe that we are capable of looking after their money. So we went ahead to recruit older people in the board. That's how we got Robin Mogere to join our board. He was a urologist, had worked at Guy's Hospital. You know, he had a nice CV. He still has a nice CV. You know, Dr. Tagana agreed to join our board. All those were lecturers. Dr. Faya at Aga Khan joined our board. So by the time we were going to the public, we had a decent board of the consultants who were in their mid-30s, early 40s, and their vision, now the team that were behind the idea, my discussion group basically. So each of the people involved from the discussion group, from my contacts at the stock exchange, from contacts in medical school, all of them were unpaid sales agents together in the founding committee. And each of us looked at our circle of influence, people who believed in us, and got them to buy shares.
But it was his links at the then Nairobi Stock Exchange that made the biggest difference.
When I worked in the stock exchange, I met an Englishman who was then in his 70s. He was an investor in Kenya. He had come here as a soldier to recruit soldiers to go and fight in Burma under his command. And apparently the Kenyan soldiers made a very good account of themselves. So he was very convinced that if other Kenyans were like those troops, we had a future. And he was convinced enough to invest his demobilization money from the army in Kenya. And he didn't come back for a while. By the time he began to come back for regular visits, independence had come. He had bought enough shares to be a director in a company then known as City Brewery that became City Trust, that I think became I&M Bank. And so he was very forward-thinking. His name was Ankram Evans. He's since passed on, but the family still have shares and take an interest in the hospital. And his idea was that Europe would be very expensive a place to retire for, you know, British people, and that Europe and the North would become expensive places to retire, and it would be nicer to retire here in a respectful relationship with Kenyans, cheaper labor, better climate, friendly people. So his idea was to set up a retirement home with a nursing section. My idea at that point was to set up what has come to be known as medical plazas. Yeah? We were not thinking hospital. Yeah? We were thinking medical plaza. So he talked to my boss, and my boss said, I have a doctor working in this company. You know, medical students are doctors to lay people. So talk to him. So we got together, he explained his idea, and I told him mine. And the first thing he did was to make me a discretionary manager. I had not figured out what that term meant, so I went to read. Said, I'll make you my discretionary manager. He had a portfolio then in Kenya worth about 6 million bob. Said, as we build up to this new idea, I'll make you in charge of my money with full discretion to invest, you know, within the stock exchange, but in whichever company you want to invest in. And I was in my early 20s. I had 6 million shillings to invest. And initially it was a big responsibility, but after a while I got the hang of it. And between he and I, we became activist shareholders in Kenya Power. The 90s generally, the stock exchange did well. So that 6 million became 30 million in a space of 9 months. That's the money that got here. So when we needed now to buy this property, especially once we found it, we needed an anchor shareholder. And he agreed I could sell everything and put the money here.
I asked Dr. Gakombe whether, looking back in hindsight, his experiences from selling chicken to bread and not discriminating any job prepared him for his current role and work.
Actually, there is almost a linear line from especially the bread to Metropolitan. The first line is working in teams. You know, from my primary school team, my primary school reading mate ended up being an economist. and ended up being on the team handling the economic side of what we are attempting to do. My O-level discussion group ended up being shareholders. We met again in medical school because they went to different A-level schools, but we met again in medical school and one was doing medicine. So we reconstituted the discussion group between him and my A-level discussion team, and our first director of clinical services was a member of the discussion group. The first doctor in charge of the outpatient was a member of the discussion group. So in terms of human capital, human resources, people, there is a straight line from primary school to the University of Nairobi to Metropolitan. In terms of fundraising, it's also a straight line because having sold bread, as we are selling shares, people at the University of Nairobi got to know this guy didn't start, this is not the first time he's attempting to do business-related work. He sold bread in school, he sold shares and was involved in the stock exchange in university. He understands, he's a doctor, but he understands business.
There are no get-rich-quick methods, he says. One has to put in effort and hard work.
It takes 10 years for companies to be discovered. By the time an organization is becoming noticeable to the public, it's new to us. There has been work going on for about 10 years. And it's not just business. By the time you are being recognized as a professional, as a doctor, as an engineer, as an architect, usually there will be a 10-year period of effort, of work, of learning, of gaining experience, of building capital, whatever, before the world discovers you. And that's a time when you need angel investors. So there are no get-rich-quick options. You simply have to put in effort. And it's not just in Kenya. If you look at Microsoft, by the time Bill Gates was being discovered, he'd been doing a lot of work in garages and in the background.
Consistent effort, constancy to purpose, and honesty is what he says has been the recipe over the last 27 years that made Metropolitan Hospital, which started as Buruburu Medical Center. Dr. Mercy Korir for KTN News Doctor's Diary.
This is KTN News.